and I'll also let you know, Jordan. I just came from a event here in New York City on behalf of Verizon. They do like a New York City content creator thing. I was not aware that the waiter kept filling up my wine glass. I just kept sipping and realized in almost 2 hours in that my glass never emptied.
That's hilarious.
I don't know how much wine I am in. I just know I noticed it after about 2 hours and was feeling good and was like, okay, pause. I got a podcast in an hour and a half. I gotta stop. This needs to end now. So I am still feeling good,
All
not
right.
drunk, but I just want that to be clear.
All right.
Going into this, that some
Good.
opinions and some things might be a little bit looser than normal.
No, that's great. Uninhibited. That's what we want.
Yeah.
We're here to just throw things out, see what happens, right? Like,
I mean, if we really wanted to start some shit, we could. But
yeah.
how you been? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. This is also, I'm excited too because you can see I'm rocking the no longer in the LCS apparel. I was like, I gotta pick something to wear. I'm gonna basically be uninhibited as well. This is the first season since 2018 where I am not officially affiliated with any teams, so I have no org responsibilities. I am not a fan of anyone right now. You know, I'm actually I'm gonna say I'm completely open ended as to how the season is gonna go. I'm gonna root for the team that I think is playing the best and gives us the best shot at winning worlds.
Well, okay, that's probably not going to be 100 Thieves, but I could still probably convince you into 100 Thieves. I still think
No,
I could.
hey, when I saw the coaching staff announcements and I saw the roster they put together, I believe 100 Thieves makes playoffs. Obviously, I mean playoffs isn't that. I don't. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't seen them update how playoffs is going to work. Nobody knows
have no
anything,
clue
right?
yet. No.
Okay. And we don't even know. I tried to do a quick search. We don't even know how many splits there are going to be yet.
No.
Okay. I was like, I felt a little unprepared, but I was like, I'm pretty sure they haven't announced anything.
No,
so.
like, and that's the great thing is like we could talk about anything and everything. The only three things that are confirmed. Yeah. The 2 teams dropped. Markz Commissioner back on weekends. That's literally all we know about 2024, and that is it.
Which I'm hyped about, though. The last thing is massive.
Like, you and me both. The second the announcement came out, I immediately shot messages trying to start scheduling watch parties immediately.
That's awesome.
If I can get notice out, like if I can get confirmation now and then start getting notice out for people to be like, hey, January 20th, hit the ground running. I'm going to do like 2 different videos out in Central Park and Washington Square Park, just like holding up a sign, like baiting a question, but then like trying to get people to understand like, hey, if you enjoy League of Legends, come watch it here at this. Like, I'm going to promo the shit out of this just to see how many people we can get for an LCS watch party.
You know what? You've inspired me a bit. I feel like somebody should try to do that in LA. I mean, it's so much easier, right?
I was going to say, you could just take people to the goddamn studio.
Yeah. I mean, that you got to pay for that, right? Like, so I'm thinking
$20.
I agree, but you could also just have people go to a bar, try to convince somewhere local to do an event or something. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna put some feelers out and see if anyone's interested in maybe co-signing something like that. That could be super fun. But I love the grassroots approach again. We're back in when esports is starting out, everyone's trying to build their own way of loving the game and loving the sport, and I think it's great actually. I mean, esports winter obviously sucks, but at the same time, it's forcing creativity and it's forcing sustainability. Like, it's not going to die. I've never been that big a doomer. Like, as long as video games are popular, esports will be around. As long as League of Legends is the biggest game in the world, which it still is, like, LCS is going to be around. So, yeah.
I was having a conversation privately about like what some of the recent decisions mean for LCS and like the future, and whether this person is now inspired and like has more faith. And they mentioned about like the time will come when a challenger comes, whenever like a new MOBA is finally made. It might be like 10 years still, but like there will eventually come a time. And I was excited for it. And they're like, oh, you're going to swap. I was like, no, I'm not going to swap. But it's finally going to force competition.
Yeah.
It will force us. Like, Premier will be in the game tomorrow if a new MOBA counterpart came out and finally forced us to innovate a little bit. Like, I know people don't like the Live Tour, but there's no denying that it pushed the PGA Tour for golf in a positive direction. Like you need
Right.
a counteracting force to really push you in the right way. In this case, for the LCS, the counteracting force was
Yeah.
our own dumb decisions. But
The interesting thing is that when you compare like traditional sports, the sports themselves are the competing forces. The NBA is trying to draw viewership from the NFL. The NFL is trying to draw viewership from the MLB. And that's why they stagger their seasons. That's why they have different, events that are on different days. You can never truly just be like, all right, you watch the Super Bowl or you watch the, MLB finals. It's your choice. Like it's not going to go well,
Yep.
So esports, it's interesting because we always, think about like different games sort of competing against each other. That's not really the case, right? Like MOBAs don't compete with CS:GO.
Yep.
Valorant doesn't even really compete with League.
No, they said what, 4% overlap, I think?
Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, I do think a lot of the player base kind of transfers between the two, but that's not, well, we've also seen, I mean, I've looked at the space for a while now, for the last 5-6 years. There's not a lot of carryover between what gamers are doing and what esports fans are doing.
Yeah.
Like it's a very different demographic, actually. So that's the challenge, I think, in monetization is like you have a player base that's millions. Why can't you monetize esports to 1% of that?
I mean, I'm curious. Do you have a preliminary answer before I give mine?
No. I mean, I'm asking a general question. I don't have an answer. I have ideas that I think could be feasible, but let me hear yours first.
I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just like it's the difference between playing a game and watching. The reason why sports is, I feel like, more easy to watch is because it's not as easy to play. Like NFL football, I physically cannot go out and play NFL football. I will die. Sure. Like not joking, not being metaphorical. Like I can literally take one hit to the chest and die. So I can't. But I can come home and watch football. And obviously,
I mean, in that example, though, the really interesting thing is I would also not even put on pads and go play football with my friends.
Yeah.
Like I don't even want to touch that game.
Yeah.
But I enjoy watching it.
Exactly. But it's the opposite for games, where people inherently play the game. And getting somebody to take a step back and say, hey, let's not play the game, let's watch. It's a step back in a way for a lot of people of like, when you're hands-on playing, you're mentally like focused, locked in, you're trying the game, you're like, it's exhilarating in that front. It's a whole different type of exhilaration that comes from watching and being invested in the esport, which is difficult for gamers to understand, especially ADHD gamers that just need something like going on 24/7. That's like, you look at your phone once during the game and it's like, oh, you're distracted by social media instead.
Yeah.
Which is going to be more likely when you're watching a screen, watching a game than actually playing the game.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's it's sort of, I definitely feel that from the perspective of when I watch a TV show now, I have a very hard time watching without going on my phone, without doing something else. And gaming is one of the rare things where I'm fully invested in terms of attention span, time, everything, energy, full mental faculty. A lot of times, actually, on weekends, when it was back on weekends, what I would do when I watched LCS was I would have games on my other monitor, and I'd be playing League on games I didn't really care too much about watching. Like if it was one of my teams, like EG or C9 is playing, I would just pay attention and watch that game. And then afterwards, like Golden Guardian's playing Immortals, I'm like, all right, well, I'll have it on because I want to see kind of what's going on. I'll catch snippets of it, but I'm just playing League on the other side. So my ideas kind of tie into that, where my idea mainly is that you have to incentivize watching the game as a way of giving some sort of value in playing the game. Yeah. So, the easiest would be like team skins, right? Do something like that. I was of the opinion that we should monetize the actual stream itself, right? In order to watch LCS, you have to buy a skin. And that skin gets you a game pass, where you get to basically, not only do you get something of sort of value, it's a rare skin that you can only get for that season. It'll be in your team's colors, but then you get to watch not only the entire LCS and all that, but you get behind the scenes, extra like access to player interviews, stuff like that. And then what you do for the free side is that you only show the most hype games, or I'm sorry, the least hype games for free.
I think that just disincentivizes people too much. I'm thinking about this from the perspective of like, okay, how do I tell the place that I'm hosting a watch party that,
Right.
hey, I need you to go buy something so that we can watch this? And like, I get it's going to drive you business, but
you wouldn't have to, right? You just log into your account.
sure, but like that, it's a pain in the ass for like the entire bar to like let me log into all of their stuff to then display it everywhere. It's like they should just be able to turn on a specific spot and watch it. And I get by all means, like I understand media rights deals. Like if you're going to show the NFL at a bar, you need to have either NFL Sunday ticket or access to cable that would allow you like a media rights, like the ability to display it to everybody. I get that portion of it. I just don't think we're big enough yet to worry about gatekeeping via pay-per-view. Yeah, even if I think like that is a good idea for certain things and I would personally pay for it,
right?
I don't know if that's the answer for growth.
Or then you make the actual product itself free, right? Like the actual games, and then the upgraded package gets you the player POVs.
Yeah, which is
like all that stuff.
100%. I agree with you entirely on that. And I think that's a very viable way to go. My logic when you say getting somebody invested is like getting them invested beyond just the game of League of Legends. And like that's always my goal with the watch parties is like when I go out to watch a NFL football game, we're not watching every single minute of the game. There are boring parts over the course of 3 hours that you're just not going to tune into. Trust me, as a Vikings fan that had to sit through a 0-0 game for the overwhelming majority of it, I am well aware of the pain and agony that comes with 3 hours of entertainment that is just trash. But what you do is you talk to other people. You talk about life. You build friendships. You do all these things that you would do like elsewhere in life, but you use video games as the catalyst for it. And that's where I really do believe like in-person events, in-person watch parties, even if it's going to be out in LA, that's fine. Like what I would love for the LCS to do is establish an affiliate program in each city that establishes a bar or a PC cafe or somewhere that can handle 20 to 30 people at minimum. For New York, we need a little bit bigger space. You establish somewhere that people can go each and every week, or at least every other week, to watch the LCS. That way, when those boring games are on, guess what we're doing? We're going to grab a drink or grab food or like contribute to the local economy as a result of the game and the esport, which then helps fill time because then we know Cloud9 versus Team Liquid is going to be on at the end of the day that we're building up hype towards.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. I know you're a big proponent of the roadshow idea of doing maybe set matches, the exhibition matches, stuff like that. I think that's huge. Teams definitely need to be a little bit better about their community engagement, about building their own hype around their own matches. I think we've kind of crossed into an area where banter is no longer organic and it almost feels forced by a lot of teams and players. It's not, a lot of it doesn't just seem real anymore. It's just like, oh, we're playing them, let's talk trash. Oh, we're playing them, let's talk trash. It's like, it's not a real rivalry. There's not like that sort of animosity that's built up because of a back and forth series where both teams have knocked each other out of playoffs multiple times and it's always them. Like that kind of stuff should develop organically. Or someone mentioned, the
one that I was going to mention is I got beef with FlyQuest this split.
Oh, really?
Dude, they're trying to jack all our shit. They really they took Busio. They're taking Nuke Duck, which by all means take him at your own peril. They have Papa Smithy, who was formerly 100 Thieves. They're trying to bait me on Twitter by trying to put 100 or like everybody else in 100 Thieves last in the fucking tier list. And I know where that's coming from. And it's like
That's okay. See, I like that though.
I don't want to fucking lose to them. I really don't.
Pick your person and or pick your team, right? And engage. Like unfortunately, RIP TSM, but like C9 TSM was always like a great just back and forth, like we hate TSM, and they just always were going with this. But like, I think you have to make it organic. So at least FlyQuest is doing that, like with one team in mind, and it sort of naturally became that because the 100 Thieves, employees, staff, all that stuff kind of got transferred over. It's the same way that C9 took a lot of FlyQuest employees last year.
Yep.
They basically took their entire like creative staff. So I mean, I think that stuff is good, but 100 Thieves is. I mean, we're gonna spend a little bit of time more talking about them more than other orgs, I think, because I am a huge fan of Golden Glue. I've been saying since he was academy coach at 100 Thieves, but even before that, I kind of watched his trajectory. I started working with him when he was on C9 as a backup. He ended up subbing in and made it to Worlds. They put Jensen back in, but yeah, he was a critical part of that team. And I think a lot of people obviously they only see what happens on stage, right? So they're like, oh, he's never been the most dominant mid laner in North America. Yeah, that's true, right? He statistically isn't that, but he brings so much value to teams. And I've seen him work with players one-on-one. I've seen how he will kind of just elevate the dynamic of a team. I think he's going to be a great leader. He went into 100 Thieves Academy, took him to 2 back-to-back championships. Those players too, if you look at those 100 Thieves players, how many of them went on to be dominant in LCS?
Okay, well that's actually a good point of contention, because technically the answer is none, right?
Yeah. So what does that mean? You have a team that statistically beat C9 regularly, right? C9 Academy, which was the most dominant academy team for like 3 years.
It means one of two things that people will interpret it in different ways. Either A, it means that being good in academy doesn't mean shit, or it means that these players, when they get put into LCS systems, the LCS system is not doing them justice for the prep work that they were getting in academy. I'm a believer in the later, that these players are good. We are not doing a good enough job of unlocking them. There are some exceptions where, like, Kenvi having stage fright, I love the guy. Only so much you can do about that. If a player gets consistently nervous on stage, you can try and emulate the environment and everything else around that. But like, there are some exceptions where I don't think it would have made a difference. And that's the nature of taking chance on amateur players. You're going to have some flops.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I talked to Kenvi a lot his last split in academy, and I advised him not to go to LCS the next year. Because he's like, look, should I do it? I'm like, what are your offers? And he basically said Immortals and like 2 other teams. And I was like, your entire future as a pro player is going to be predicated on how you do your first year. Like, are you sure you want?
Which is incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah. I was like, he was so highly touted, but that year, jungle was really, really, really like strong coming out of academy. Like every team had a really strong jungler. So if he's coming out, he was guaranteed to start on a bottom 3 team. Yeah. And he went to Immortals, and it was the worst team in the league. And so as a jungler, when you're on the worst team in the league, you don't get to actually play. How do you play with 3 losing lanes? Like anyone who's ever jungled is like, yeah, you're doomed. You just can't look good. You're going to get, not only do you not have you're going to get jungle gapped, because when they have 3 winning lanes, how easy is it to play jungle? Like
I would say Tactical was winning bot lane. That's the only lane that I will contest.
It was very inconsistent. And then also, is Tactical winning bot lane on his own, or is it because they're sending attention his way? That's a resource.
Yeah, sure.
It's a resource issue now. So, I told him, like, I would honestly Smurf Academy one more split. You're almost guaranteed that the next split, some junglers don't perform up to task. They're going to maybe start thinking about replacing. But, it's tough because you don't know for sure. And if you get your shot, and we talked about this too, if you get your shot now, it's a very different environment than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Back then, it was like getting a shot on a top 5 LCS team. You're actually making money. You're actually getting put in front of enough fans and all that. You basically turn it into a living. Yeah. Now it's like, it's so sketch, right? You're getting like players on tier 1 teams getting minimum contracts. And that's very, very nerve-wracking for any player trying to come into the scene, because you're playing against people who are proven and are willing to take a minimum contract, and you have to somehow beat them. Like,
Well, that was the conversation that I know you, Raz, and I had, or like the exchange
yeah,
we had on Twitter. Is like, by all means, I understand you advising him not to play for Immortals or like any of like the lower squads. I get the philosophy behind it because there is currently that reputation of you have one split to prove yourself, and otherwise, you're trashed. You're gonna get
yeah,
passed up on. But at the same time, I don't know if this is just like the traditional sports player and fan in me, but like I don't know, you get your shot, you fucking take it.
yeah.
And if you're not, if you're in a position where you have 3 losing lanes and like it's not on you, I think you need to be vocal about that. And you
Yeah,
need
and
to be
that,
what,
well, yeah.
and that might come at the cost of your teammates. And that
Well,
might
that,
come at
and
the cost of like them not liking you, sure. But like then like you're changing the public narrative because you can't if you have 3 losing lanes and there's nothing you can do about it, but you're mechanically playing it correct.
well, so you're talking like I love the comparison actually because when you look at athletes in traditional sports who look at it as that I'm the underdog, I'm going to show everyone that they're wrong about me. They got the chip in the shoulder. That's a specific type of player, right? That's not every player, and especially in LCS, especially in League, what I've noticed is there's not a lot of players who have that mentality.
But we
There's not a
need it.
lot. Oh, absolutely. Now there are players who have that mentality. Just off the top of my head, Blabbers like that. Blabber will always rise the like he's one of the most competitive people I've ever seen. But he also played very high level badminton when he was younger.
Yeah,
He's
which
raised
makes
in that
sense.
environment.
Yeah.
Berserker. Some of these guys like they just have it in their head that they do not want to lose ever. And if it's ever a situation in which they feel like so the problem is I hate to use Kemby as an example. I don't want to rag on him. He's not that type of person where he's gonna basically tell the team, you know what, screw you guys. Let me play carry. I'm gonna carry this team. He's a rookie and he's a little bit nervous and shy. He's gonna approach it like, well, what do I need to do? How do we win? And then he's gonna try to like coaching and let them kind of develop the team around him and like, he's gonna work with them versus like taking charge of the team and being like, I don't care that I'm a rookie. I'm going to step up and show you guys how to play this game.
Which
It's hard. It's really hard to do
to be
that.
fair, like that mentality can also work. But
Yeah.
again, like
But only with the right environment, right? Like now you're talking
well,
like the
I mean,
team has to develop.
not even that. Like you can put like say he has the year that he had in Immortals, but he's actually active on social media and like
Right.
having the conversation with people of yes, look, I'm trying to plug in and make my team the best we can be. And I'm not going to solo anybody out because I don't want to flame them nor, boil or like have any tensions rise. But like here's what I am personally doing and communicate to people and show in a public way the efforts that you're going through. That changes the public narrative. Whenever you have a split like that and you just remain silent and you just let it happen, and then we're sitting here and like I came into this and said, stage fright is clearly an issue, which I've heard other people say about him. Like when the only narrative is what we are being told and what the rumor mill says, you don't have control anymore then. I'm not saying that would have guaranteed him a spot on rosters next year, especially with consolidation of teams. But at least then you have some control over it.
Like Sniper is an interesting one, right? Sniper has a lot of hype. A lot of people know he's very, very good mechanically. He is probably overhyped right now because of the fact that he's a rookie. He struggled a bit in academy. He was not like perma hard gapping in top lane, at the competitive level. He's a solo queue monster, right? But I think that's another one but the hype around him is based primarily around his solo queue and him posting clips. Look at this outplay. I went to Korea and I just dumpstered whatever like pro LCK player. And it's like, okay, so we already have this impression of him as like, he's obviously skilled. So there's no doubting that. If he struggles, now it's going to be a question more about like, is the team preparing him correctly? Is the team playing around him correctly? It's not, is he even good?
It's interesting you say that because that's not where my hype for him comes at all.
No,
I don't.
I do. No, I don't want to doubt. I do think he's actually going to be very good, but I think the expectations for any rookie in top lane right now they need to be tempered because top lane is just one of the lanes where it's a knowledge-based lane, and if you just play it not as quite as well as like whoever, the more veterans, and you saw it with Fudge, you saw it with all these other top laners.
Yeah.
You come in, if you just don't know the lane as well, you're just going to get destroyed. It's not even like a mechanical thing. It's such a knowledge gap lane.
We saw that with Tenacity a lot last split, where like he was holding his own at portions in lane, but then just consistently in the wrong spots every time come team fights. And it was like, oh man.
Yeah.
You got a bit to go. But the difference I don't know. The difference for me with Sniper is that it seems like there is widespread understanding and recognition that this is a prodigal talent. And with prodigy talents, like Tenacity was hyped up coming in of like, this kid's crushing Academy. He's going to smurf it when he gets into the LCS. He might be able to supplant Fudge right away. Like these two got beef together. Like at some point he might be able to overcome him. With Sniper, it's this kid is going to have an insane career.
Yeah.
And that to me at least, and I hope I'm doing a good job with other fans and like trying to get this point across to people, that should temper your expectations up front. The goal is for him to have, 6-7 titles when his career's done. But that doesn't mean he has to win right away. He's probably going to be, out of 8 teams, 7th or 8th, starting off top lane in the LCS. And there's nothing wrong with that. So long as by the end of the year, maybe he's 6th. And then by his second year, he's 5th or 4th. And by third year, he climbs up.
They need to have that developmental pipeline in place. I didn't look at how their positional coaching is broken down. That's something that C9 did much more heavily in the last 2 years. I think when they brought Fudge in, they realized after that first, but we need positional coaching because some of the, like Fudge specifically struggled a lot in lane and just in how to lane. Max Waldo was specifically working with him. They had Vagar V2 working with him. He was constantly doing 1v1s, learning lane mechanics. So now Fudge has become sort of that top laner where you watch him play, especially in LCS, he doesn't lose lane. He very rarely loses lane ever. If at worst he goes even.
Yeah.
But he understands what his role is. He understands how to absorb pressure. He understands how to manage waves. He calls everything out. He's actually very, very vocal in terms of macro decision making on the team. And that allows Blabber to they let Blabber kind of be the creative genius.
Yeah. Where
he will just call some plays sometimes. You're like, dude, you're skipping 3 camps to do this. And he's like, yes, I'm going to go invade here because he's going to be here. And he just somehow knows, Blabber is probably the other player that had the most prodigal, aura about him.
Yeah.
Like people knew he was a generational jungler when he was coming through scouting grounds. Like he was or proving grounds.
Yep.
He was phenomenal. I'm not going to talk too much about imports. Berserkers, obviously they knew that he was going to be that.
Yeah. I mean, that just,
he was the most highly scouted ADC in LCK.
In the world, realistically.
Yeah, every team wanted him. And my theory was, I don't know for sure, but there's a lot of the timeline sort of fits with when Berserker came over. There was obviously the LS involvement, but that was also when C9 traded a few players to T1 for their Valorant team, which became a mainstay for the Valorant squad. Zeta and Autumn Korea. So
you think it was like a multi prong deal?
I wonder if it was sort of like this, like a multiple deal where they were like, hey, we can give you this. And T1 for sure did not want Berserker staying in Korea.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. Because he's the only threat to Guma.
And that was always the issue. Was like Guma would always do enough to keep his spot. And so Berserker would get frustrated. Like, I'm never going to play. Let me out, But they didn't want to trade him to any other, like, you're going to let Berserker go to Gen G? Like, there's no way.
I'm curious. If you were Berserker's agent right now, and we know from reports of like everything else going on that he took a pay cut to play with Jojo Pyun, and that most players from Cloud9 took a pay cut to be able to handle that or to be able to make that roster work financially. If you're him going into the offseason and the option is there to stay with Cloud9 regardless of whether they win or not, or go to a top 5 LCK team, what are you telling him to do?
From what I understand about LCK teams, and I've talked to, some executives like in Gen G and all that. I was actually hanging out with the president, CEO of Gen G,
Arnold.
at a yeah Arnold at a
Yeah.
conference. But there's only the top 3 teams in LCK, top 4 teams really have any sort of resources, and even that is getting slashed drastically because of player salary caps now,
Yep.
which they have implemented. So he taking a pay cut in NA is still probably better than going to LCK and taking another bigger pay cut.
Wow. That's
Uh,
shocking.
in general, just because also honestly, it's easy for him here. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Lifestyles
it's a
entirely.
much chiller lifestyle. He enjoys being in the U.S. He enjoys like the attention, being able to go get food, hanging out. It's a lot more relaxed. He still works super hard. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the hardest working players I've ever seen. The guy him and Eminez would regularly put in 10 solo queue games a day,
Yeah.
every day, every day. Like the guy was a machine. Um, I had to tell him to stop playing so much at one point because he was like burning out. And I was like, dude, you're having issues from this. You need to take cut it down to 5,
Yeah.
just for today. But he definitely works hard, but it's not the same as being in Korea hard.
Well, I know they talked in the C9 video that got released last week that there's a 12-hour requirement now written into their contracts.
I think C9 is tired of the narrative. They were starting to sort of suggest that last year. They were like, "Hey, are you doing?" I think they're also requiring them to stream more. If you notice, a
Yeah.
lot of C9 players are streaming a lot more. There's a minimum number of hours that every player on every org was actually supposed to do. That every org I've worked with,
Yeah.
e.g. C9, they always had minimum hours of streaming that most of them would just kind of like not do,
Yeah.
or they would stream like they would stream for 4 hours, but 2 hours of it would be them like not even there, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, they would just leave and go watch a movie or something. Like
Yep.
it's something that they're going to start pushing towards because I think again we talked about sustainability and all the orgs are realizing, and C9 is at the forefront of this. What is sustainable is our players are not just here to play League of Legends competitively. They're here to bring attention to the org. They're here to drive merchandise sales. They're here to actually benefit us. And that is sort of what traditional sports has always been. You see every NFL player understands after the game you were doing interviews. And they've turned it into like you want to do the interview. If you're getting interviewed, it's because you played well. In esports, what I've seen is it's always this lots of like, oh, you got to do the interview now. And they're like, oh, I have to stay in the studio. Everyone else gets to go home. And
I noticed that when doing some of the interviews, for those that don't understand the process, an LCS game gets done. Any media that has submitted a request to interview a player, like whenever I submit the form, I literally just put any on any team. And sometimes you get some the people that want to be there talk, but a lot of times you could tell they don't want to necessarily. It's gotten better. I think as time has gone on, people have understood a little bit more. And there are some players that I just freaking love, especially the coaching staffs, I will say.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to a coaching staff, they're great. They'll sit there and talk forever and just enjoy it. And it's like, God, I love this.
It's just the attitude and the I think the types of people that become professional league players is different.
Yeah.
And you see it, and this is not like esports specific. This is game specific. League of Legends specifically, their players are just not wired to want to be in the public facing, like I'm in front of a camera all day type people. Like you look at Valorant, those players are naturals. When they get them in front of a camera, they love it. They love the attention. They're hyping the crowd up. They're like, they want that spotlight. And it's a little bit different with League. I think a lot of players are inherently just more shy. They're a lot more nervous about talking too much trash or like saying something that like might get them in trouble. So, and that's what I mean. Some of the banter even feels forced where they will try to talk trash because they think people want to hear it, but it comes off as like, this is not actually how you feel about this.
No. Along those lines, it's funny. I just had this conversation earlier. So the event that I was at tonight was Verizon's they call it a My Table thing where basically all the sponsored content creators for Verizon came together, had dinner together, and one of the events that they did this year was take people to LCS finals. There was a Verizon suite there, and I had access to Sylvix's suite, obviously the LCS media area, and then the Verizon one. And I was kind of trying to bounce around everybody. And when I was in the Verizon one, I was trying to explain to some people like how the game works, etc., stuff like that. But I didn't really get the chance to talk to them much until today, when we were all out at dinner, and I was asking them like, okay, like I want to know, as the league guy who's like trying to like give feedback to developers, to players, to fans, to everything, like what was your experience like as an outsider? And they said the part that was most interesting was like they got to go and meet, I believe it was the Dignitas team, because Dignitas is sponsored by Verizon. They got to go tour their
Yeah.
facilities and like meet the players. And they were like, the players were so shy. And they're like, we're not, like, you would think whenever you go to like talk to a player, like somebody that's kind of like a mini celebrity like that, like they might have like not necessarily a braggadocious personality, but like,
Yeah.
you know, something that's a little bit more like forward facing. They're like, nah, like they were shy. Like we were
Yeah.
like, it was odd because like we are like in a completely different world. So we're a little bit more timid, a little bit more shy, like a little bit more scared to ask questions because we're not like League of Legends people nor like hardcore esports. And they're like, we felt more social in a way than some of the players. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
look, that's just that's the League of Legends base. We're trying to change that as time goes
But
on.
you know, that's why I love players like Jojo Pune and Fudge and Blabber. Like these are players that are comfortable being that person. Jojo
Yeah.
Pune, you know, like he changed the league. You know, Vulcan, right? Like they changed how players interact with fans, and people love it. And I think more players are seeing that, so they're trying to emulate it. But it's hard because it's like that's just who he is. Jojo Pune is literally just like that all the time.
Yep.
He's always talking trash. He's always like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually just good at all this stuff." And you're like, "No, you're not. What are you talking about?" He's like, "You told me like I'm gonna come back ripped." I'm like, "Are you? Are you gonna work out?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do some stuff." And I was like, "All right." he just has that confidence, you know, like being a
Is he
professional
jacked
Fortnite
now?
player. I haven't seen him in a while, but
Nah.
I showed him some workouts. He does stuff, but you know, he's just like very true to who he is. So I think when that's authentic and you can tell, people like that, right? Like
Yeah.
he literally is that player. When you go and you see them in scrims, after a scrim, literally between two scrims, he will take a nap on the couch just because he's like, I'm tired. He would just lay down and close his eyes, and everyone's like, just let him be. Like,
no way.
And then he'll get up like, oh, what are we playing next? Like, I mean, he's like, and the whole time in chat, in comms, he's just trolling his team. He's like, I'm gonna pick Timo. They're like, no, don't. What are you talking about? And it's just like he's just like that all the time. He's a little kid. But I do think as a player, he developed a ton this last split, this last year. I talked to him a bit about it, but realizing that he doesn't have Impact, he doesn't have Vulcan, he doesn't have Inspired. He had to be the leader on that team, and he basically said he wanted to do it. He told the coaching staff, I'm ready. Like I had my year where everybody helped me out, and now I've learned I'm going to try to help these players. I'm going to be the leader. And he had an MVP season. Like it was incredible what he did. And that's another team where you're like, you look at that roster on paper, you don't think they go top 4.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They outperformed expectations heavily.
Yeah, they made it work. But I forgot to mention my point about 100 Thieves Academy those 2 years was those players underperforming in LCS is indicative of maybe poor developmental systems in LCS, but it's also indicative, I think, of very, very good coaching at the academy level of 100 Thieves. So that's why I think Golden Glue can get a lot done when he has even more talent available to him. He's a great communicator. I think working with primarily NA players is going to be really interesting to see what he can do. I definitely think that what I'd like to see is, and I don't want to get too much into like regional difference, but you don't do well when you put Korean coaches with NA players and vice versa.
Yeah.
You just don't. We've seen it so many times. It's not even just the communication of they speak different languages or maybe they're not. They literally have different mindsets towards how to develop the team and how to progress the team. Not even in terms of the game. They have different mindsets in terms of how the team should be organized. It's interesting. I talked to Inspired on my stream recently, and he's like, I don't think coaching helps me very much because I don't need to learn from my coach. I think what they need to do is organize the players and be that head role, keep the motivation level, keep the environment up. He's like, we are better at the game than they will ever be. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but it definitely, but it also shows why in League it's very, very difficult to get certain players to improve. He actually said, I don't think players improve very much at all. I think they sort of are as good as they're going to get, and they can learn new things. They can get better at certain champs and all that. But you kind of see where everyone's ceiling is very, very early. And I don't necessarily agree with that either, but it's interesting to see the mindset that he has. And I think that's probably an EU type mindset, because I've heard that a lot from EU players. Yeah.
Interesting. So that's very like Miami Heat, Eric Spoelstra. Like, we just need a people manager. We don't need a systems or like a coach that's going to come in and like actually structure anything.
Yeah. Yeah. He thinks that, like, I know it was probably an issue of a lot of coaches that players work with. If they're not in the top 5% of Challenger, most of these players don't think they have anything to teach them.
I mean, that's just been historically proven wrong in every single sport that's ever existed.
Right. But again, over the last 5 years, I've run headfirst into this brick wall over and over with coaches, analysts, players, training staff, everybody who has been heavily involved with League of Legends, who thinks for some reason League is different than everything else that we have ever learned about human performance and skill development in society. For some reason, they think League is just different. I don't. It makes no sense to me.
I don't get that. Like, Tiger Woods, greatest golfer of our generation, so incredibly reliant upon different instructors changing his swing and like adapting things as time goes on, despite being the most stubborn person in the world to teach. Like, Hank Haney wrote a whole book on teaching Tiger and how he would try things, and if he said 100 things, one might go through. But what Tiger would do is, when he was away from Hank Haney, he would like, if he would hit 100 balls with Hank there, working on the things that Hank wanted him to try, he'd go home and he'd hit 1,000 more and try them on his own. And if something worked, he'd come back next session and be like, so that thing you mentioned, not bad. Let's see how that can work. But like, Hank Haney's never going to be able to hit a golf ball the way Tiger can.
Exactly.
Greg Popovich is never going to be able to fucking do what Tim Duncan and the big three ever did. Like, why? Oh,
knowledge and ability are very different. Yeah. It's very different. Like, you can have very, very good coaches and I can train someone to lift weight, right? I could give you all the knowledge, the science behind it, the form, all of that. I'm not actually going to go and deadlifts 800 pounds, but someone who has the physical capacity to do it, if I had them do it properly, should be able to do it.
Yep.
And it's like that's kind of the thing with League. I've always found really interesting. Even in other games, there's not this mentality. Valorant, they take coaching very well.
Because I think Valorant and CS, 100%.
Yeah, they listen to coaching. They understand that coaches make calls. These are the plays. Like, this is how we do it. League is just unique in that sense. And I don't know what it is what it's going to take to break it. And then in contrast to kind of his philosophy from an EU standpoint is Korean standpoint. Korean coaches I've worked with and talked to, there's a right and a wrong. They really believe that there's a right answer to things and there's a wrong way of thinking about things. And so that's why they struggle a lot with NA players, because NA will play a different style and they'll say that's wrong. And then they'll be like, why? We are doing it and it's working. Yeah, but that's not right. And like, it's very difficult to
they don't operate in the gray area like we tend to do with literally everything here.
And so that's why when they brought Earl, I forget his I always called him Earl. But Earl, when they brought Earl in, right? Because Impact basically requested him.
Yeah.
That squad started clicking because now Impact had a coach. He didn't listen to Wild Turtle. He's like, I need a Korean coach. And then they started to, I would see a lot of these team meetings where him, Earl, and Impact would talk in Korean, and then they relayed to the rest of the team what's going on. And it was like, now we're drafting around what Impact's ideas about the game are, and then that enables the team to play in a unified style, coherent style. But it's because the two Koreans have decided this is the right way to do things. And like,
So okay, so that's interesting though, because then you look at Impact's career, it makes sense then why he pops off on Team Liquid, because their entire coaching staff was, I believe, like mostly Korean. If I'm not
so I
mistaken.
think it's not that it's better. It's that as long as the team is on the same page
Yeah,
and they
but like
understand
he
the
clearly has a
approach.
tendency to click better with
Yes.
Korean
Yeah.
coaches. But
Mhm.
now he's
Mhm.
going into a system with FlyQuest where it is European to the core. Now, granted, they have
No, Impact. Impact is a TL again.
shit, you're right. I was sorry.
Yeah.
I thought he was. I'm thinking of Whippo with FlyQuest.
But yeah. So I
Yeah, never
actually
mind.
okay. I pulled up all the rosters because I was curious about. Yeah. No, so we got Impact, APA, Yon, and Core JJ. So we got the big Korean core still, right? Not. I don't mean just
Yeah,
Core J, the
but
core,
notably
but
Spawn as their coach.
yeah.
Spawn
So
head coach, what,
it's
Reignover assistant?
Rainover's probably going to be Impact's guy.
Okay.
Um, I have a lot of faith in Rainover too. Again, I see C9 as kind of the Patriots of League of Legends,
Yeah,
the LCS.
I think that's
Uh,
fair.
everyone who's come through their coaching staff, everyone who's come through their academy system, like they've all gone and done pretty well elsewhere. They're all very competent. And it's not necessarily that C9 develops these people. It's that C9 is very, very good at scouting people. They're very good at scouting coaches. They're very good at scouting talent. They approach team building in a way that I think more LCS uh, orgs need to be looking at more, which is system. They meme about it. The systems, right? C9 systems. There literally are systems in place at C9 that they will continue refining as they go, but they don't like to deviate from them very much. They go into every season with a concept of how their system should work that season, and they stick to it.
Which
Everything is designed. Like,
okay, that brings up an interesting question then. But I want to let you finish that before
yeah.
I go on mine.
But no. So it's sort of the Patriots mentality of do your job. You don't need to do too much. You don't need to be a superhero. You need to do your job. And if you do your job, we're all going to get along fine and we're all going to make this work.
Are the C9 systems working though?
I think if you look at historically how high they've placed consistently, how they've done in international competition, I think they do pretty well. I think actually the biggest thing holding C9 back is the fact that they feel they need to win every split. And so they constantly shuffle their roster.
Fair.
Like, I think if they had kept some of the rosters that they had together for a little bit longer, we could have continued seeing developmental growth that didn't occur because they'd scrap it after a year.
Do you think that's all actually on C9 though? Or
No, I think it's
is that on
no, it's a combination.
players?
It's on
Like,
contracts, it's on players. It not contracts to player, but
yeah,
contracts in terms of like they tend to spend very, very big. And when you spend big and you bring players like Perks in and you win a championship, they're not going to request less money into the next year. They request more.
yeah.
Because they said, hey, you brought me in for this. I won you a championship. Now what? And they're not going to pay them more. They're going to, they're going to go find the next one. So I think it's a little bit of suffering from your own success. And the problem with C9 was they never ever developed a farm system that truly fed players into their main team. They had a great academy team that they would again spend heavily on and develop really well with good coaching staff, and they would sell those players in order to fund the main team.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad deal either. If you're on C9 Academy, you're almost guaranteed to get LCS shots the next year.
Which is fair. It's interesting because the last time they had that system was the last time that C9 saw international success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was heavily due in part to having their academy system. I was in meetings with their manager stressing like, you guys I was pushing them to develop an amateur team as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, we can't. There's just no reason to do it because if we start developing players at the amateur level, we're almost not going to put them into academy 90% of the time because we already have an academy team that's very strong, and we're almost 0% chance going to bring them up to LCS level. So all we're doing is spending our resources training players to go to other teams. And I was like, that's not
There-
necessarily a bad thing though for the league, but I can understand competitive, like it always comes. This is what I mean is that they suffer from their own success because they always need to win in domestic titles. They never actually think, is this going to get the overall, like, what is it going to take for us to win internationally?
yeah.
It requires the entire league to be playing at a much higher level than it currently is.
Yeah, I guess my question to them, if I could ask them, would be, what makes you think you're different than T1? Because T1's doing exactly that, where
Yeah.
they have T1 Academy, T1 Academy Challenge, or T1 Challengers, T1 Challengers Academy, T1
Yeah.
Academy, and the T1 main team. Clearly, none
Yeah.
of them are going to be seeing the light of day on the main roster
Yeah.
anytime soon, if
Yeah.
not ever. But like, they're still doing it,
I
and
agree.
it's like,
Yeah. Arnold said the same thing. Actually, he had a tweet out once where he was happy that I think it was Quid
yeah,
came from Gen G Academy, right? He's like, I'm happy that, he's going somewhere good. We want to continue developing Academy players and sending them all over because we want every league, every region, we want LCK to be better. We want them to be better. That makes us better. He's like, our team is still going to beat them. But if everyone is playing better and we think we have the best players in the league, we're gonna get stronger.
yeah,
LCK has always been like that. They all have academy teams. And I definitely, I think right now it's more of an issue of resources, right? Like if your funding
yeah.
is that limited, do you really want to spend your resources improving other teams?
Yeah,
Which,
which to be fair, I'm not going to argue against that now. I
yeah,
completely understand if you have a budget of $1.5 million and between salaries, overhead, G&A, like everything else that you got to cover, like sure, I'm not going to fight you on that. But the fact that we weren't able to make that work whenever we had unlimited funds just speaks to piss poor management.
I mean, I think that's top down. I mean, when we had unlimited funds in the league, right? We were getting these deals signed with $200 million and stuff. And like, they didn't spend any of it on developmental stuff. They didn't spend any of it on why don't we establish smaller like ERLs here, smaller grassroots leagues. They didn't think long term with this. We're going to drop $5 million on importing a player. Why? What does that get anybody? Even if you go and get to semifinals at Worlds again, does that actually get you anything tangible?
No, I've been on the train for a while now that you could have a team win worlds
Yeah.
from the LCS, and I don't think it would lead to much.
No.
Because I think
But
people would just write us off as
I
a joke until we
I
did
think
it again.
exactly. I think if we win Worlds, it would be a fluke rather than a result of continued developmental success.
Exactly.
But if
You
we
would
win
have to do it
Worlds,
again.
yeah, if we win Worlds and it's a result of the region being good enough to compete in the top 3, then people actually care because then it's like, okay, this wasn't some random team that just somehow got a cupcake run through groups or whatever, and then somehow T1 choked or something. It would be because okay, every org from NA that's playing at Worlds is actually very strong and easily are in the top 6 in the world, and they win. Then it would be like okay, we were actually seeing competition versus luck. And I think that's why right now even Korea is clearly a tier above. Just everybody like the fact
Well,
that T1.
good thing
Oh my god,
Good thing Paul's not here because he was messaging me earlier today while the Korean awards were going on, and he's just like, "Bro, it's some bullshit that Pays didn't get an award, like, or I forget who all it was, but he's like, LCK is some bullshit. LPL's best league in the world," and I was like, "Man, you were salty." And then he realized
I
that he
think
was not talking about all the awards, and there were other awards that cover what he was talking about. He's like, "Fine, they're fucking good."
I mean I think LPL has a very very high ceiling, right? When their teams are playing on, they're unstoppable. But the LCK I think has developed a lot in the last 2 years. I would say in 2018 you watch IG play and you're like, oh my god, this is no team is touching this region, And then 2019 same thing, and then 2020 same thing, and then 2020 then it started to change a little bit. LCK adapted. We haven't seen LCK play the LCK Korean style of let's sit back and scale and like just win on macro. Like they're hyper aggressive. T1, I think, had more first blood kills like this season than almost any other team. Like their goal difference at 10 minutes was insane.
Yeah.
Like they snowball very, very hard. And I think it's just that LPL showed them something. So they were so dominant for so long playing this style, and then LPL came out, and IG just that year punched everybody in the face, and it was like, level 1, we're gonna 5v5 you in your jungle, and we don't care. We're gonna continue fighting you. Every single possible chance our jungler's gonna come and 2v2 skirmish you. We're gonna fight over every skeletal crab. We're gonna fight over every cannon minion. Like it didn't matter. And
then FTX did the same, and it was like, oh,
okay,
man.
and it just changed League of Legends. Then all of a sudden, even if you're playing a late game comp, you have to win early too. You also have to be considerate of like, are they going to try to do something in the first 10 minutes that you don't expect, and you don't get to play the game because now scaling doesn't matter, laning doesn't matter. Like you've lost 6 objectives, and it changed the game fundamentally. But I think LCK really leaned into it, and I didn't watch a ton of LPL or LCK this year in regular season, but I watched all the playoffs, and LCK looked amazing in playoffs. Like their mechanics looked awesome. Like their team fighting, you watch Gen G and T1 team fight, it's incredible. It was on par with any LPL team. Like I think a lot of LPL fans and a lot of LCK fans obviously only watch the region, but you watch LPL team fighting. Obviously, mechanically, they're amazing, but only 2 or 3 of the top LPL teams really played macro as well as LCK did.
Yeah.
I think BLG would always somehow randomly just fight at the last 20 minutes and like win some massive team fight and swing the gold like 9K. Yeah. And it was like, that's not a play you can reenact every time. Like,
no. And it's been a while since, I'm trying to think, when was the last time we saw like a true comeback team exist? Was it G2 2019? Because like I remember G2 2019 at Worlds, like there were so many games that they were behind and they would just flip the switch. And like we're not talking like, because T1 had games this Worlds where they'd be behind.
I think JDG this year had a lot of games that they were behind, but not by that. They'd always keep it close enough. They just felt like they were behind, and then they would just win because they were just better. BLG had a lot of really fluky games where I'm like, dude, there's no way they win this. And
Bro in chat brought up Mad Lions 2021, which I think is fair domestically, but internationally it didn't hold up.
NRG, okay, yeah, and NRG is an interesting. We can talk a little bit more about LCS specifically. NRG is an interesting team. When I talked to Inspired too, he was like, I don't know how NRG had the year they did. He's like, they've never impressed me. I've never been threatened by them.
Maybe because they're the one team that has coaches that maybe they listen to.
Yeah.
Maybe. And it's such a foreign concept that Inspired wouldn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I was like, really? I mean, they won the final against a very strong C9 team very convincingly. It was not fluky at all. They looked like the better team. I was like, and especially after C9 just smashed them the first game. Like, I was like, oh, this is over. Like, they wrecked them. And then the energy came out and smashed them 3 games in a row. And I was like, holy crap. Like, what happened? And then they did well at Worlds. They showed no fear. They fought teams head up, like straight up. Like, I was really disappointed by C9 at Worlds. The game that they threw against, who was it? Not T1. Their first game. It was an LPL team. It was LGD, right?
No. It would have been Weibo.
Oh wait, maybe it was Weibo.
No, because NRG played Weibo.
It was the very first LPL game, and they were up. They had Baron, and they ran it down mid, and they got killed by Azir and Jax jumping on them from the bot side.
I'm pretty sure it was T1.
It might have been T1.
It had to be because NRG was pool 1, and they faced off against Weibo.
Okay.
Then C9 was pool 2.
I thought it was LNG. It might have been LNG.
Oh, you're right. I think it might have been LNG.
It was LNG.
Yeah.
So yeah, they basically, what I was saying when I watched that game, I was like, they're C9 playing any LCS team in that situation doesn't play like that. They would get Baron, they would shove the wave, and they would reset. They would close the game out the right way,
Yeah.
But because it was LNG, they just like got in their heads like, we need to finish this game, and they just went down mid, didn't pay attention. Like I'm freaking plat. I'm like, do you guys not see the respawn timers? Like, do you not see Azir Jax? Like,
Yeah.
How did all 5 come back when you're half health and jump you, and like you just don't expect that at all? You know, it was wild to me.
Like, it was interesting watching the moments and memories back. It was like it struck me as odd because I was like, where's C9? And they just showed one clip of like, and C9 bowed out of the tournament. It's like, that actually was fairly indicative of what actually happened with C9 at Worlds, because I don't remember shit from their run.
Yeah, they really struggled this year, and I don't know if it's like a confidence issue of like after they got beaten in finals, they went into finals thinking they were going to win. Obviously.
Yeah.
But I also know historically that C9 sort of has a mentality issue with that. They tend to be one of the teams where a lot of their players kind of get complacent about certain teams. I've heard it a lot from players on that team, like, "Oh, we got this team. It's not a big deal." I'm like, it's never not a big deal. What do you mean? Like, you could be that's why they lose to Golden Guardians every time. They always go in there and be like, it's just GG. They're not good. They go like, we 5-0 in them scrims all the time. Yeah, but then you go on stage and they smash you. Like,
yep.
I've never understood that. And that's another thing that I think in League is very common. I think a lot of League players at the pro level just very, like, they have it in their head, one, that scrims matter, and that two, if they're a better player, they should just win. And it's really hard for them to like understand that you can have a good day, you can have a bad day.
So we're kind of a little bit over an hour, and I don't want to take you up too much of your time. So I got two final things that I kind of want to go on here. First is like wrapping up on the team side. Give me who are your 2 teams going to MSI? Mm-hmm. Who's your bottom team, and where's 100 Thieves?
Okay,
I don't need to know all your rankings. I just need to know.
I mean, the easiest 2. I mean, C9 I think makes top 2. I actually really like. I have to say NRG, but I'm really curious to see how NRG does this split, having lost so much of their staff.
Yeah.
That's remains to be seen. Obviously, you kind of have to lean into the fact that, okay, 4 of these players have played together a lot, and Huhi coming in is great for FBI. Actually, like, they played together a lot. This is not really a roster shift for them. I'm just curious about how much of an impact the coaching staff had last split and what it's going to be this split. I also wonder a little bit about the hangover, right? Like from a Deep Worlds run, and then like you have all this time off, you have to come into season and somehow get ramped up again. I think they struggle a bit in spring, but I think they'll be fine in summer. So I'm probably going to actually lean towards FlyQuest and C9 for top 2. Just by nature of how good the players are. Yeah. I usually find that spring chemistry matters very little until, like the very end of it. Again, remains to be seen if they do. I think lock-in tournament's great. I think it's a really good way for teams to immediately get thrown into the fire and figure out what's working, what's not working between people.
We are definitely not having lock-in, though.
Yeah, I know.
That's unfortunate. The only shitty thing.
I really liked it.
I love lock-in tournament. It was so much fun.
I loved it. And I think all the players liked it, because they're like, you're coming off of an off season and you go straight into scrims, and it feels like hard to get into the mindset. You throw straight into a lock-in tournament, and they're already, these are competitive people. They're already like, oh, I want to win. And then based on how you do in lock-in, now scrims start to feel important. You're like, man, we got shit on in the playoffs of that. Like, we have to get better, and like, that's the real season start. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I'd say C9, NRG, maybe FlyQuest. I'm sorry, C9, FlyQuest, maybe NRG. FlyQuest, just again, I think they have a very, very stable top mid, and they have Inspired, who's, I think, probably top 2 junglers of all time in NA. He's again one of those generational junglers where he really transformed the game. When he came to LCS, every jungler here got better.
Yeah,
and that's across the board. I like Busio. I hope he is as stable as he was last year, but with Masu, if you have to go with a rookie, ADC is where you put them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
ADCs were like, EG did it really well with Danny. C9 did it really well with Berserker. You get some really, really mechanical ADC who has got a wide champ pool. You put them with a support that's stable, and then you have veterans in jungle, top, the solo lanes, and like it should do pretty well. I think they're actually going to be really, really good just off the bat because they have a stable foundation to build off of. 100 Thieves, I think, is more developmental. I was really questioning why River was added to this team.
I mean, would you rather Malrang?
No.
That was the alternative.
I guess I didn't know who was still not signed, all that stuff, but like it's tough because you have a rookie top laner, you have essentially a rookie bot lane, right? Like Ayla's been on 3 different teams and he didn't play a full split until EG, where he was basically working with another rookie ADC.
His
and it
regular season record though is still impressive.
It was pretty good, right? So I think a lot remains to be seen about how Quid does in lane. He wasn't the most impressive in lane, but we'll see.
Spooks, notably in his AMA, predicted Quid to be a top 4 mid laner in the league by the what did he say? Let me just pull it up. Somebody posted it in my esports chat. Fans should expect Quid to be a top 4 mid by the end of summer.
That's really hard because, like, if I think top 4, I'm thinking Jojopyun, I'm thinking Palafox, Insanity. I mean, even Jensen. Like, if the meta is control mages, Jensen might be top 2.
I think top 4 is doable in a year where mid lane is not. Yeah. I think the only locks for me are Palafox and Jojo.
I mean, APA. I mean, I don't want to discount APA either. Like
I think there's room to take advantage of APA. Like
he's a rookie, Like
Quid, I'm expecting a lot of growth out of Quid this year, and if that's the case, like I can see a world where he's top 4.
Yeah, and then the other one I think is a little bit of a dark horse would be Shopify. I really like Fake God. I think he definitely deserved another LCS shot. He was utterly smurfing in Academy. Insanity obviously demonstrated he could play at an LCS level pretty comfortably. Zeyzal, I've said for forever, why is Zeyzal not an LCS? Like, the guy is clearly too good for Academy, and he demonstrated it every single split, and he never, ever... You know what? I think he might have also just not taken a lot of offers because he wanted to play on a top 4 team.
Yep.
But the guy made semifinals at Worlds. He's not a bad support. And he's a great shot caller. He's a leader on the team. He's very, very positive. He keeps everyone leveled, grounded. It'll be an interesting split. I think there's a lot of upside for a lot of teams. The one that I think will struggle the most is probably Dignitas and Immortals. I have no idea what to expect from Immortals given Castle, I don't know at all. Mask, I don't know at all. Ole, we haven't seen in years. Tactical has been sort of good at best, but he's also had some really, really off stretches of time. Yeah. And then Armeo, again, Armeo's, I think he's very, very good, but he showed last year on EG, he's not consistent enough or dominant enough, I think, to take over a game on his own. That was the issue. That's why they kept switching him out with Shaden. They were like, we need someone who can like just take a game over. And Shaden did occasionally, but then kind of was a rookie and kind of lost it in playoffs. So
regression pretty quick in playoffs.
Yeah. I like Dignitas's roster. Rich, obviously, I think has some talent. XU, I'm a big fan of. I don't know Dove. Tomo and Isles, again, we're popping off in Academy, so hopefully they can kind of make that next big jump. But yeah, right now, I'd say 100 Thieves is going to be
you froze,
6.
By the way.
Hold on.
You just have, with Discord, you just click it, unclick it, and it'll...
Yeah.
Boom. You using the Elgato face cam, by the way?
Yeah, it always does this.
I have the same issue. I've heard it's a wire thing.
Oh, so I have to get a new USB? I wondered what it was.
Potentially, but mine fixed itself on its own, so I don't know.
Mine's fixed itself for like a month, and then it starts happening again, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think 100 Thieves, honestly, spring, I'm going to say 5th or 6th.
Okay, I'll take that.
5th or 6th. I think by summer they go top 4. I think summer they're top 4. I actually have like I said, I have a lot of faith in Golden Glue and a lot of the players. Meech and Sniper, if they can make the big jump into summer, they should be pretty good. Because I know River's a great jungler. River out jungled Blabber, I think 2 games last split. Just dominated him. It was not even close. I was like, dude, I haven't seen Blabber gap that hard in a while. Like, and he had the right play, you know, and he's always got these good pocket picks, right? You give him J4, you give him like, you know, basically any carry jungler, like early game carry jungler, he plays very, very well. So if he can enable Sniper to get comfortable and just start popping off, you know, if top lane meta shifts to carry top laners, I mean, Sniper's going to be an absolute monster if Aurelia comes into the meta. Like, I want it.
To God,
I want it. You know?
I will say for chat, I am not going to be revealing my rankings. I'm going to ask everybody and their mother. I will reveal mine officially the Saturday before LCS returns, and then I will talk about it on the podcast that week. But I'm holding my cards close to my chest.
I think based on just history and all that, and just looking at the roster, I think C9 just smurfs spring. Like, they just win all out. Because
I will say
they always win. I will say this.
Spring. I think C9's winning spring, and it's not even
close. They always
win
spring.
So that's not a shocker.
That organization historically always does the best early in the year, and this team is built to win right away. I mean, the only replacement is really Jojo Pune.
Yeah.
And mid is a role that they've been trying to fill for 3 years.
Yep.
You know, I think the last stable mid laner they had was Jensen. And even then it was never, you know, he wasn't the carry on the team. It was always their bot lane. It was always, you know, like jungle. So yeah, putting Jojo Pune in there, Jojo Pune gets a lot of heat because he like plays a really aggressive style, and he sometimes will int and he sometimes will talk trash and not back it up. But at the same time, he also is one of those people, he never really loses lane.
Yep.
He generally wins lane very hard, and he just doesn't show up on the stat line. I think on broadcast, you're always looking at Berserker. You're always looking at Fudge, like, oh, these people are like 4-0 and 6, like they're popping off. But you look at Jojo, he's got 100 CS lead on someone, like, and he hasn't died. He has like, he's 2 levels up. You know, he's just a monster. And I think it speaks a lot to who his inspirations are. He's always said, I want to be Chovy. Yep. He needs to get to the point now where Chovy was this year, where, okay, you're not just sitting in lane farming, you're also dominating team fights. And that's, you know, I think he's going to make some big steps if he has, it'll be really exciting to see if he kept his form from last year, but now he has Blabber in jungle and he has a winning bot lane.
Yeah.
Like that's insane to think about. He's going to have so many options.
Scary.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Nice. The final thing I want to ask you about, probably the biggest piece of news this week, and we can just keep it general because I know there's not much information to go on. Markz is commissioner.
Yeah. I'm very excited. Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I don't know him too well personally. I was on Hotline League once, chatted with him a bit. I know he's very, very passionate about the league, and just hearing some of his content and stuff he's talked about, I think he's got some really good ideas for league development. I think, you know, I really liked Jackie. I talked to her a bit. She was very, very helpful in getting me involved more with like the actual LCS finals when they came back to live audiences. And so I really, really enjoyed the way that she did her job. It's unfortunate she had to step down, but it's for health reasons. But I think Markz is going to be great. I think he's someone who's passionate about the league. He's already expressed in other, you know, throughout the last few years in different pieces of content, ideas that he has for league development and for like better, I guess, organization of the league. So, you know, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of the same of what we've seen. I think he's going to try to shake things up a bit. I mean, the fact that already they're pushing to like, okay, let's just bring back weekends. And instead of doing the whole beat around the bush of like, oh, well, our data shows this, like, dude, you go online, everybody unanimously has said this is bad.
Yep.
Like, I cannot watch during the week. And for me, I was so frustrated by it. Like, I have a job in which I have to use a work computer. I can't even open the stream on the side anymore, you know? like it's completely inaccessible when they put it on the weekdays now, which sucked, you know.
Yep.
So I think that's the biggest change. I'm hyped about is just okay, put it back on weekends. Let's hopefully force teams to do more stuff, like more interaction with fans, more events. Next LCS finals, there should not be an org in the LCS that doesn't have a table there.
Agreed.
It's inexcusable. Like how can you not support the league you're in? Like
And
just show up and sell some t-shirts.
and I
Like
will add this as I'm not sure, I don't know if they've booked the venue yet. I'm assuming they have, but like
yeah.
what I would just say is my challenge to the LCS on that front. Yes, every team should be there. I don't want a single empty seat.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to another arena where you look out and the majority of seats are empty. If you need to do a theater setup similar to how we did spring 2021, which I think is perfect for the state of the LCS right now, do it.
It
Or
was
spring
better that way
2022.
actually.
I
Yeah,
I agree.
the EG spring, it was better that way. It was packed, and then on the other side, you had all the booth stuff, you know, the fan fest. It was indoors. It was so much better organized that way. I totally agree. And then you could also make it then a stage presentation, right? Which
Yep.
is actually cheaper and it looks better and it's easier for everyone to see. Yeah, I totally agree. I think stage presentation is the way to go, and it looks better when you have 40,000 fans in one section rather than 40 split over 100,000 seating.
And like, just look at the crowds. Look at the crowd
Yeah.
difference. Like
Yeah.
I'd imagine there was no more than 10,000 people at most for that EG final, and there was probably 10,000 in Jersey. But the optic difference is massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive.
This is actually a great suggestion someone in my chat had. Offer teams to a portion of the tickets that go to each team's fan base, and then they should sell them.
They already do, to a certain extent, to my understanding. I think teams just give them out in like giveaways and stuff like that.
But yeah, but they should sell them and have team sections and stuff too.
Oh no, I agree. Like one thing that I would love is I don't know how it would be possible because it's tough given that tickets go on sale really early, but I wish you could have like one section that's dedicated for each fan base and like really let them pop off.
Yeah. Like color code it and all that. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's how you start getting people more involved. Because even if your team's not there, like you're an Immortals fan, your team didn't make it to top 3, whatever. It'd be fun to go to be with other fans.
Yep.
And like you said, it's experience of like, hey, we get to go show our support for our team. Your team's going to be there because every team will be. So your star players are going to be there to sign autographs. Like it'd still be a fun experience, even though you don't care who necessarily wins the final.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I definitely think that kind of stuff makes it more appealing. And again, tie it into the game stuff. Like if you go to an LCS finals, you should get a code that gets you an access to a custom chroma or something, or like an icon. It takes them zero. Like it cannot take a designer more than like 6 hours to design a new emblem as like, that's so cheap. Not even a skin, an emblem that you can put on your like profile or whatever.
Yeah. Wear it like a badge and just start collecting them.
Yeah, exactly. Collect your item. People love that. And then have a display. You click on someone's profile, you should have a display. Like these are the live events I went to. Like, yeah, just tie it into the game. Like that stuff is so easy to do. But
the final thing I just want to, you don't have to comment on this if you don't want to. I wanted to put this out there given what I saw on social media earlier today. And that is, I'm not going to come out here and defend Travis because I don't think Travis needs me to defend him. Travis is his own guy, and obviously he is where he is.
Yeah.
I'm really tired of old heads in the media landscape of esports and the grudges that they all have against each other.
Yeah.
Jacob's tweet, and I have respect for Jacob and all that he's done. I've had many conversations with him. Come out and say that you were wrong, and you don't have to add the 3 paragraphs of fucking text that is context for like why you've historically had issues with Travis, why you have issues with him now. It's like, dude, we don't fucking care. I'm sorry, but the majority of people don't get Travis. You can get pissed off on whether he whether you see him as a Riot shill or a corporate mouthpiece, people want him to ask harder hitting questions to John Needham. He's going to ask the questions that also will get him another interview. And whether you like that or not, it's like, oh, well, then he shouldn't take the interview. It's then, okay, well, then we get no communication. So, like, I'm sorry. Travis has established over the last few years that he's not a journalist.
Right.
And you can argue whether, like, the roster videos and all that, like, still count. Like, nobody gives a fuck at this point. I'm sorry, but we don't. Drop the pettiness. Drop the judgmental situations and everything else. Just fucking let it be.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're talking about old esports journalist people, I mean, obviously I've had beef with a few of them, for no reason too. It's all ridiculous because they want the same thing that they accuse Travis of, which is clickbait. They want to generate interest. They want to generate likes, whatever. And I understand there's probably more of a personal feud between Travis and Jacob Wolf, but like, you can't expect Travis to be you can't hold him to a standard of journalism when he literally is saying, I am not a journalist. But then you're like, well, you're doing a journalist job, therefore you are a journalist. He's saying, I'm not a journalist. I am breaking stories and talking about, in the same way that you would always say, I'm not a journalist. I'm talking about stories. Now, the difference between Travis and you is that he actually does get leaks. He actually does have insider information a lot of times, but it's not his responsibility to also act with journalistic integrity when he's not a journalist. And I totally agree with you. It's like, it's ridiculous that people are holding grudges. Like, I've had personal issues with certain people in the space that aren't even involved with League of Legends. They've been literally kicked out of League of Legends, but they want to talk about it all the time because it is the biggest esport in the world. And they've tried to create beef with me over nothing. And every single time I've treated them with as much respect as possible. And I've said, if you have a personal issue with me, I'm willing to talk to you about it. But instead, you're going to block me and then try to lie to your fan base about anything I've done.
That's my biggest thing. Like, if anybody has a fucking problem, just, I'm sorry. At this point, I don't want to see a fucking tweet about it. Get in a call, have it all be out there in the public, hash your shit out. If you're not man enough to do that, then shut the fuck up about it. I'm just so done with the petty fucking drama and clickbait.
I hadn't blocked them until they started like quote retweeting me on their account that they blocked me on, and then started basically lying and slandering me or writing libel. Right? I hadn't blocked them until that point because I wanted that open door to be there. If you want to decide to actually talk to me like an adult, as a rational human being, as a man, as you say you are, then just reach out. I'm always happy to discuss things with people, rationally. I'm not going to get mad. I've never called you a name. I've never even cursed at you. I just think it's ridiculous. But no, that's not how these people operate. They like to yell into their echo chamber and then get a bunch of reinforcement that they're correct and go on with their day. And if you get upset about it, they go, you're a snowflake, you're stupid, and you shouldn't care so much. And you're like, well, like, some of the accusations made against me, I have to care about, because that's not even, oh, you're right or you're wrong. You're literally attacking my competency as a clinician and basically accusing me of malpractice. Like, that suddenly becomes a much bigger deal than, that's
not a small thing anymore.
And so I was more frustrated. But yeah, I totally agree that a lot of the drama is completely unnecessary. And the one thing I will say about esports, the way it's gone now, is there needs to be a lot more collaboration. There needs to be a lot more. There needs to be less of the like drama between people outside of the actual games, and the drama in the game needs to be more directed towards what's actually really, enjoyable and entertaining. Not just, you're just creating, I guess, drama for the sake of causing drama is not good, right? Yeah. But if you're talking trash, you're increasing the competitiveness of the environment. That's fine. But the amount of people I see that are outside of that just talking shit about each other because they don't like each other, that's wild.
Yeah. Like to put a pin on like the job thing specifically. Imagine if you went out and publicly mocked every single fucking time that somebody got rejected for a job.
Oh yeah.
In today's world where you have to apply to 6 or 7 jobs a day to keep up with just getting a chance at an interview. Imagine being pissed off that somebody applied for something.
Well, like, I think the craziest thing is that the guy who got the job, they're friends. Like, you're literally trying to say that someone is upset that his co-host got a job that he sort of was interested in but didn't even apply for. Like, it's wild.
The whole it really irked me as like I just put myself back in the shoes of like applying to so many jobs a day. And if I had somebody online that was just like, you know, you didn't get the job, fucking great, good. Like I'm glad you didn't. It's like mind your business. You go do your own shit. And I will. The fact that Travis waited until now to say anything is better than I would have done. I personally would have, the second somebody comes out and says something like that, once it's public that Markzy's got it, I'm going scorched earth on people. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, dude, you're wrong. And if you're saying this and perpetuating this, kindly screw off. Like, I don't need, screw you.
And then that's too, Travis is really good about that. He's always understood, like, I don't want to burn all my bridges. But at the same time, you know, I'm glad he said something though. He's
same.
Like, you know,
that's the Reddit thread. The second I saw the Reddit thread, I was like, okay, he's got it. He has to say something.
Yet another day where Reddit surely knows everything about League and about professional esports. I've gotten into so many arguments with people who I don't know if they like don't research or whatever. Like they don't like during the whole LS bullshit. I was literally arguing with people who told me what happened. I'm like, you're some random person in like Europe, usually European. You're some random dude in Europe who's an LS fan, and you're trying to tell me what happened in a team room that I was sitting in. What are you talking about? Like,
jeez.
Like, what? I don't even know how to respond to certain people. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm telling you what happened. You're trying to tell me your interpretation of some random idea you came up with. I'm telling you what happened. Like, I don't understand this.
There's a whole political conversation to have around that, and like people's inherent trust in each other's words and the erosion of just like basic communication around that. But that's for a different time. Anyways, I think my wife is just about home, so I need to wrap
up. All right.
This up.
Hey, it was great talking to you again. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. My arms are numb. I've been holding Coco here with my hands crossed like this the entire time. I've not moved them, and I cannot feel anything right now.
You're a soldier.
Oh my god! But thank you so much for coming on. For those that are watching either on Spotify or elsewhere, you can find him at Dr. Respawn. Is it Dr. Respawn Therapy?
On Twitter is probably most active. It's at Dr. Jordan Sai, but I also stream, so just Doc Respawn on Twitch. But yeah, love chatting League, love chatting about all this stuff with you. So hopefully we do it again soon.
Absolutely. You let me know when. I'll be there. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you later. Adios.
All right. Take care.